So first of all, welcome everybody to my presentation. And I first say thank you, Peter. You have shown what ISO and the working groups have been doing in all these years. And myself, I'm addressing a little bit more to the political side, because what we need in the future is clear decisions and perfect rules, which we still don't have above all animal species. I start very simply with the terminology, because a lot of people is using different terms, and the product, and Peter said that all the time, is a transponder, because in the transponder we have the microchip, we have the antenna, and we have a surrounding material. In this case, the surrounding material is glass, and also the glass has to be of a special classification. At the time when the rules have been established, let's say the 998, for instance, or even the sheep and the rules for horses, etc., there were only laser-programmed silicon available, which means, and I will show that on the next slide, the wafer is a disk on which all the silicon chips are on, and at that time, already in the first production step, the final number was already programmed. Today, the situation is different. Today, in the majority of cases, it is OTP silicon used. What does it mean, OTP? It's one-time programmable, which means at any time during production, the number can be put into the transponder and has then to be locked, which opens an option for duplication. Sorry, this was too quick. This is what I said before, the wafer. And there can be up to 20,000 chips on one wafer, depending on the size of the chip. This is the IC. This one has 1.4 millimeter. It's an older one, but still in the market and still available. This is the connection of the antenna on the silicon chip. And this is the 11784 coding structure. And in the majority of cases, when I start talking about this part, I get the answer, oh, don't bore me with any kind of techniques. But as long as we enter into electronics, we have to talk about technique. And I've read the first bit. It's called the first bit, but it's the bit 63. It's the first bit read from the reader. And this bit has to be set on 1, because there are other applications in the industry where the ISO 11784 is used, for instance, in Germany for trash container identification, and there must be clear distinguishing between the different parts. Peter spoke about the reserve parts. I have not brought them in here. And then we get the part of the manufacturer or country code, and the most important, the unique identification code. The first bit read, as I already said, is this bit 1, and I did not write down the amendments, but Peter already mentioned them as well, that we have the retagging counter and a user information field, and in addition, today it's the bit 15, which is used for future applications, which means the new transponder, which will come in some years with a 14223 standard, which means there can be information being written into the transponder. This looks a bit strange, but I will try to explain you how I saw that. And this is what you see on a display. Usually it has to be displayed this way, which is also mentioned in one of the ISO standards. And you have the 3 digits. Here it is, okay. Which you see here, either manufacturer code, which always starts with N, and the XX is then from 87 to 34, so which means we have these part which are full manufacturer codes, and we have the part of the 900, the shared manufacturer codes, and these shared manufacturers have a 3-digit allocation code which has to be put in the in the national ID part. and I hope I'm updated correctly with 120 manufacturers, 54 with full manufacturer code, and 66 with a shared manufacturer code. Why is that for me so important? Because when we go into the electronics, the numbering scheme is for all animal species, not only for livestock. And that is often the case that will be forgotten. We have the CITES animals, which are the protected ones, and we have the companion animals. And in the majority of cases in the world, the market usually starts with the companion animals. And once then the official scheme comes over for livestock, already numbers have been used and there is a risk for double identification, double code. What is the responsibility for a manufacturer? First of all, he needs the ICAR certification. That means he sends in the products to be tested, and then he needs a conformance test for each single product, not just for one, and then he can follow up with different other ones. It is signing of the code of conduct, which means respecting all ISO rules. We have maintaining an internal database to guarantee each single production step for the traceability of all manufactured transponders. And this is then not like in a lot of warehouses where you have a product code and plenty of products behind. For the manufacturers, each transponder is an own product with an own code to be traced. And the uniqueness of the transponder number has to be guaranteed. And that is now the addition. If using OTP silicon, the 11784 code must be stored in the database together with the UID of the silicon. I've shown you before the wafer, and at that time when the 11784 code was was already programmed in the chip, that was done with a laser. Today, with the OTP, which we can program at any later step, we still have a serial number in the chip. And the serial number together with the 11784 guarantee uniqueness, nothing else. And there is a point which is certainly very important for the animals and the owners, because if there is a wrong transponder, who has the trouble afterwards? The owner and the animal. But they are not responsible for it, because our politics actually have not done enough work to solve that issue. I have analyzed data of the biggest German database for companion animals, and what we found is, I will show you some more details. Wrong animal bit, that's what I explained already before. We have missing product codes, we have double codes, we have misuse of the country code, we have unauthorized use of the country code, we have senseless codes, we have wrong allocation code in the shared manufacturer, and all that is a lack of harmonized regulation and coordination. This is a sample, and I got the allowance of the owner and from the veterinary, proven both cases, transponder is identical with a German country code. Usually it should be Germany to take care of that, but unfortunately also in Germany there is no regulation for companion animals. It's just livestock. Sorry, too quick. This is now a double code transponder, and this is not something which has been found by coincidence. These are codes which we programmed for ICAR for special tests. But you can see the distinguishing between the codes is just only the UID. This is a case which happens regularly in a lot of countries. Use of the country code without any competent authority, which means there is people believing that there is an advantage if the animal always is carrying a transponder with a country code. And what we see here is a code which at the end of the day is a valid ISO 11784 code, but it's not an animal transponder, it's not correct. This is now an analysis of the 900 codes, and the first column shows the manufacturer code, the second column shows the allocation code, and you see 3 ones are red. These 3 ones, for instance, don't exist at all, which means these animals carrying these transponders, it is never possible to trace back that producer. Never, unfortunately. That's what we saw as well. 094 is no code at all. Obviously, somebody has tried to program a kind of a telephone number and hoped to get 0049 into the number, which is the German prefix. But I have looked at in the ISO 3166, and 049 is no country. 004 would be Afghanistan. And all that happens when a country has not taken responsibility above all animal species. Now come to the part in Germany where horses and cattle, it's regulated. But what do we find? Horse transponders is already in the animal, in a dog, and registered in a database. What do we see? Cattle is not yet officially on the market with electronics in Germany, but we already have numbers which are dedicated for cattle, and they are in dogs. The EC 998 of 2003 regulates the traveling with pets for non-commercial reasons in the European community. The animal has to be accompanied by an EU animal passport, which is linked to the transponder. There is no common way of printing, issuing, and monitoring in the member states. And the best one comes from Switzerland, which is not member. There is no common use of a transponder code structure, nor is the use of the country code specified in detail for a harmonized use across Europe at least. And my question is, how can effective control and disease prevention happen if the system is not understandable for those who are using it daily, border control, customs, etc.? The level of know-how which we have in the ISO committee is that high and that advanced that it'll take years or will never be able to be transferred to the last person having the reader in hand and standing in front of the animal. And these people sometimes have to take decisions. I guess that was too quick. Skip one, okay. The national regulation of some countries in Europe. In the UK, DEFRA already has decided several years ago to forbid strictly the use of country code for any companion animals. In Switzerland, it's the way that the country code is followed by a 0 plus the ICAR manufacturer code, and it's been checked at the end by the system for registration of the animal and owner, which is ANIS in Switzerland. We have in Denmark and the Netherlands more or less the same way of codification, which means 2 in the ID part, in the 12-digit ID part, means the responsibility for uniqueness is delegated or given back to the manufacturer. And the 991 minus the ICAR code is then the position 3 and 4 on that code. France has made certainly the strongest regulation. They have decided that all dogs, cats, and ferrets have to wear a transponder with a special codification. On position 4 and 5, there is a species code. The question is if the species code is really relevant and if this does not cause more trouble than it's good at the end, because we have seen that in the German example that you get horse transponders in a companion animal. If that is the right way, it's question mark. Position 6 and 7 are the homologation code for the company, which has to pass a special test in France. This test It's nothing else than the ICAR test which you have done already before. So the question is if this is needed and if the costs for that are needed as well. Again, too quick. A summary of the German situation. That's what we find regularly since the early beginning. One company started with it and the others had to follow. And the last three ones are the official ones accepted by the Ministry of Agriculture. My conclusions. The market of electronic identification is still relatively young and not yet sufficiently organized. And I clearly say again, organized on the political side. ICAR is doing a brilliant job, ISO committees as well, now it's on the politics. The technical developments are by far faster than the adjustment of the administrative responsibilities can be realized, which means the fact to make a regulation based on laser-programmed silicon several years ago is not updated anymore. So that has to be changed and brought into the new version. And in case of an effective disease eradication and prevention, we lack on the most important basic part, the proper animal identification. In countries where not all animal species are under the responsibility of one ministry, national coordination for the code structure is of essential need. And a committee of experts which coordinates all needed technical adjustments with the responsible ministries for all animal species is the mean of choice. And I say, thank you. Thank you very much.